What's up, guys? Tony Ramirez here, and welcome to the garage. If you're into turning wrenches, fixing up cars, or just keeping your ride in top shape, you're in the right spot. I drop real-world tips, no fluff, just what actually works. So hit that like button, smash subscribe, and let's wrench smarter, not harder. All right, enough intro. Let's jump right in.
Welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm excited to dive into the world of dry sump systems. We'll explore how they operate and the numerous advantages they offer, especially in high-performance engines. I'll break down the mechanics behind dry sumps, explain why they are preferred in racing and performance applications, and highlight the benefits they bring in terms of oil management and engine longevity. So, whether you're a car enthusiast or just curious about automotive technology, stick around as we uncover the ins and outs of dry sump systems. Find the best garage to drain your dry sump. See price. The dry sump is a type of oil sump. Unlike a wet sump, it is not designed as an engine oil reservoir. For this purpose, it has an external reservoir called the oil pan. The dry sump itself, however, is used to recover the oil after it has passed through the engine to lubricate it. What is a dry sump? What are the differences between a dry sump and a wet sump? How does a dry sump engine work? Find the best garage to drain your dry sump. See the price for my car. What is a dry sump? The oil sump is a reservoir designed to lubricate the engine. Located on the lower part of the engine, it is a tank that contains the engine oil and recovers it after it has passed through the engine. It is also emptied when the car is changed. There are two types of engine oil sump. With a dry sump, the oil is not stored directly in the sump, but in an external reservoir, separate from the engine block. However, when the engine is lubricated by circulating oil, it eventually returns to the bottom of the engine, where it ends up in the crankcase. But engine oil doesn't stay in the dry sump. It's immediately returned to the external reservoir, known as the oil pan. The dry sump is less common than the wet sump. Your car is almost certainly equipped with the latter. The dry sump is found mainly on motorcycles, but also on sports cars and in Formula 1 racing. What are the differences between a dry sump and a wet sump? The characteristic of the dry sump is that, with this solution, the engine oil is not contained directly in the sump, but in an external reservoir. While it inevitably falls back into the engine after passing through it, since engine operation is identical whatever the type of crankcase, it is immediately returned to its reservoir. With a wet sump, this is where the engine oil is stored, under the crankshaft. There is no scavenge pump. Compared with a wet sump, the dry sump offers several advantages. It lowers the engine's center of gravity, since the dry sump reduces the height of the crankcase. This gives the car greater ground clearance, which is essential for off-roading, or better cornering. Lubrication is better in tight bends, on slopes or at high speeds. This is because the engine is continuously supplied with oil, even during sporty driving. Unlike a wet sump, a dry sump does not allow the system to be deprimed, where the movement of oil in the sump can prevent it from being drawn in by the oil pump. As the oil is not located under the crankshaft with a dry sump, the crankshaft will not tap into the oil, which does not disrupt its operation and energy. Thanks to the radiator, the oil is better cooled. With a wet sump, the oil is more affected by the forces of driving, especially sporty driving, than with a dry sump. Even if these phenomena are relatively rare, it's a risk that competition vehicles can't afford to take. Above all, being able to place the engine lower and lower its center of gravity has a significant impact on the vehicle's aerodynamics, which explains the use of dry sump on sports cars or in Formula 1 racing. Oil is also prevented from moving around in the sump, which can cause imbalances in tight bends and impact vehicle speed. However, the dry sump also has its drawbacks. In particular, it requires an additional pump, as well as a reservoir external to the sump. The circuit is more complex, which increases both manufacturing and maintenance costs. Draining the oil is also more complicated, since it has to be done via two different bleed screws, one on the dry sump and one on the oil pan. Finally, it's more complicated to check the oil level when cold. Find the best garage to drain your dry sump. See the price for my car. How does a dry sump engine work? The dry sump is a different system from the wet sump, but the operation of the engine itself is identical. Oil will circulate through the engine in a similar way to lubricate parts. However, a dry sump requires an additional pump, the scavenge pump. It also uses a radiator to cool the oil. A dry sump works in several stages. The oil is drawn into the tank by the oil pump. It is then sent through the oil filter. Once filtered, the oil circulates through the engine to lubricate it. The oil falls back into the dry sump. It is sucked up, cooled by a radiator, and returned to its starting point in the external tank by a recovery pump. Now you know how a dry sump works. You also know what its advantages are and how it's used. As you may have gathered by now, dry sump systems are not found on passenger cars, but on motorcycles. The external reservoir is usually located under the seat or in the frame. Find the best garage to drain your dry sump. In conclusion, a dry sump system offers significant advantages over traditional wet sump designs, particularly in high-performance applications. By effectively managing oil circulation and reducing the risk of oil starvation during extreme conditions, dry sump systems enhance engine reliability and efficiency. The ability to maintain optimal oil pressure and temperature contributes to improved performance and longevity of the engine. As we've explored, the operational principles of a dry sump system not only provide superior lubrication but also allow for greater design flexibility in engine layout. For those seeking to maximize their vehicle's performance, investing in a dry sump system can be a game-changing decision. Thank you for watching, and we hope you gained valuable insights into the operation and benefits of dry sump technology.